I'd say the biggest issue right now is the state budget, which the legislature has to pass every year. It's a process where it begins in the House, and the House has passed its version of the budget, and now the next step is it goes to the Senate Finance Committee. They had hearings on Thursday and Friday, and they posed some skeptical questions to the governor's staff yesterday in the Senate Finance Committee, and then at some point the Finance Committee will pass it, and then we'll go to the Senate floor, and then the Senate will pass its version of the budget, and they'll inevitably make some changes, and then it will have to go back to the House for final approval before the legislature adjourns on June 2nd.
So what does the budget look like at this point in time? What are the big issues there?
The legislators are frustrated that there's not more money to spend for all sorts of projects to restore some of the cuts to, particularly to higher education that occurred during the Jindal years. You know, Steve, there's a puzzling thing going on. Louisiana has the lowest unemployment rate in the South. Governor Jindal is trumpeting that. This unemployment rate now is down to 4.5% in Louisiana, but jobs are not being created enough to throw up tax revenue, or at least the tax revenue is not coming in a way that you know, a bunch of other states have got budget surpluses as the economy improves, but that's not happening in Louisiana. So that's a big concern to legislators.
Well, that's really strange, isn't it? I mean, what is it that we're just not taxing enough? Is that the overall? Is that the issue?
Well, I've talked to two economists, of the top economists lately. One is Lauren Scott, who's retired from LSU, and then Jim Richardson, who is at LSU still. And they both said they're puzzled by it. On Monday, what's called the Revenue Estimating Conference will meet, and this is a 4-member panel who looks at the state's finances and says how much money is available based on how much money is coming in and the projections for the future. And from what I'm hearing, that the sales tax revenue and income tax revenue for the state is mostly flat, maybe a bit of a bump recently in corporate tax revenue, and that means that there's not more money to spend. Now, if you like less government, then that may be a good thing, but even legislators who say they want less government would rather have more money to spend.
Jim Brown. Now, obviously, you were in government for 27 years, and I'm just wondering, did y'all have, when you were in government, did you have this kind of issue where the job situation was better? But
I don't know how to read that, Steve. First of all, I don't know where there is a lack of those wanting a job. I find, as I travel around the state, that the economy and better jobs are a tremendous issue, and I don't know how those figures are screwed and skewered and how they affect it. But there's a lot of people just giving up on the job market. They're not working. They're just backing off and taking the welfare benefits, or they've just decided to give up and not work. So I'm not sure that, you know, we've got this robust economy where there's great jobs out there. I get calls every day, any chance I can recommend a job for them, and I hear that everywhere. So I'm not really excited about that 5% number, because the reflection is, if you get around this state, there are lots of people looking for jobs. Seniors who've been cut out of their position because things are being contracted out. You go up into northeast Louisiana, where many of those parishes up there have 20–25% unemployment. So again, I don't know where those figures came from. I just don't think they truly reflect the job market. Now, you go down to New Orleans, and pretty much in the city, there's some great opportunity if you've got a good education in a particular field. If you deal in computers, if you have a cross-section. But let me tell you what, if you're an English major in New Orleans, you just can't find a job. They're not hiring at UNO, and they're not hiring at the various universities. So I'm not real optimistic about that 5% number.
Just to be correct, I think it's actually 4.5% what they say it is now.
Right, and I think you're right, Tyler. Now, also, as part of that, and it wasn't mentioned, at least in terms of Governor Jindal's comments, is that the unemployed actually had increased to, I believe it's 95,000. Although there were 2 million people employed, but the number of unemployed people actually increased over last month. And so my question is whether or not we're seeing pretty much in Louisiana what we're seeing around the country, and that is people are not looking for jobs, they're giving up.
I'm finding, for example, a lot of state employees here in Baton Rouge have been laid off because of some consolidation for a number of reasons, and they initially would want to work a little longer to draw their better retirement, but they're just taking a smaller retirement, and they're saying they just can't find anything. So was a person like that in the figures, or are they considered out of the figures? There's a lot of ifs and uncertainty, and I wish we had a robust 4.5% economy. I just don't see it.
Well, Jim raises an important point, Steve, which is that people who are not looking for work are not counted as unemployed. And that, in fact, is one of the reasons that the unemployment rate nationally has come down, is because there are fewer people looking for work, and the figures show that the same thing is happening in Louisiana. So that I think helps explain Jim's point.
Sure, but could I comment on something that Tyler brought up about the emphasis in the legislature? I pick up today's Morning Advocate. I've got it right here in front of me, and I think it points out the emphasis I see in the legislature. The lead story is about abortion, the legislature and abortion. Down at the bottom of the front page, it talks about money, whether budget lacks money for Gulf oil spill and some of the money crises. There is such an emphasis in this session on social issues, cultural issues that I've seen more than maybe in years past. Abortion, gay marriage. There's a vote on the gay marriage issue, throwing out the sodomy law. An awful lot of emphasis on those pieces of legislation. Yes, Tyler's right. They are trying to deal with the budget, but there's this massive giant hanging out there of health care, to where we could be stuck with having to come up with $1 billion because of this health care debacle put on by the Jindal administration. And then what's happening with higher education. Tyler referred to this earlier. From about 2008 on, the cuts in higher education have been 40%. Well, you can't run a major educational operation with a 40% cut when inflation is bringing the costs up all the more. So there's these huge unresolved financial issues that are hanging over the legislature. They're just trying to get by. They're kind of punting the problem, just hoping and praying the feds are going to come in here and bail them out. And I've got some real questions in my mind as to whether that's going to happen. I think right now, unless there's some major changes, as Tyler said, they're going to get a budget together, but we're going to see a special session of the legislature come up this fall. There's too many unanswered financial problems that aren't going to be addressed, and the governor's just going to have to call a special session.